Hey everyone, a quick live stream today to continue on with my live streaming. And today's session is going to be about work-life balance, or as I prefer to talk about work-life integration. They're very similar concepts, but I think that the term work-life integration much more appropriately is the right way to think about how to achieve that balance between how much time you spend at work, how much effort and energy you expend at work, and how much time, effort, and energy you have for things that are outside of work. So today we're going to talk about up to 10 topics. We'll see how much we go for time. And I'm trying out a new live streaming platform. Hopefully it works. I have no idea if this is working right now. So fingers crossed that my new live streaming setup is working and the software is good. So the first thing that we will talk about today regarding work-life balance is about setting boundaries. So setting boundaries is one of the most critical aspects of achieving the work-life balance that all of us want to achieve. No one wants to get burnt out. No one wants to be spending all of their time and energy at work because we have other things to do in our lives besides work. And they are important things. There's more to the human experience than just working all day, every day, and being a productivity robot. So setting boundaries is number one for a reason. It's the first thing I'm talking about because it is absolutely essential to the long-term sustainability of your work-life balance. So the key things around setting effective boundaries for yourself between work and non-work activities. Firstly, I always recommend setting the boundaries early. This would even include things like setting the boundaries or hinting at the boundaries during your interview process. As part of getting to know your hiring manager, who will potentially be your manager, it's important that you're upfront about what your boundaries are. And those boundaries, look, they need to be reasonable and they need to be sensible, but they also need to be communicated effectively with the hiring manager, who may end up being your manager, so that they know where you stand, so that they can respect those boundaries if they're the kind of manager that respects boundaries. So I always recommend to people that you should raise any specific boundaries that you need and have as an employee at interview. For instance, if you are a parent and you have parenting obligations, you should raise that as a data point during your interview and talk about the kinds of things that it's going to impact on in your career and in your work life. So for instance, if you need to depart by a certain time on a specific day of the week every week, make sure that this information is known in advance. This is not just beneficial for your employer, this is beneficial for you. Because the earlier and the more clear you are about your boundaries, the easier it is for everyone in the workplace to respect those boundaries. People have a tendency of maybe not believing that your boundaries are real boundaries if you bring them up last minute or if you don't communicate them clearly and consistently. Don't expect that because you have communicated that you need to leave at say 3 o'clock on a Thursday, that everyone will remember that, lock it in their brain, and will always know that that's what you need to do. So by consistently communicating these things before they are going to occur, you're going to put yourself in a much better position for people to respect those boundaries. And then as you consistently keep to your boundaries over the over the longer term, this is going to help people. It's going to reinforce that these boundaries are real and that you are not going to stray from them. So that leads me on to my second point about boundaries, is that if you don't stick to them, people won't believe you. They simply will not believe you. So when you set a boundary, make sure it is a real boundary and make sure that you are willing to stick to it vehemently. Make sure that it matters to you and that you stick to it. The only time I would ever recommend diverging from your boundaries that you have set in advance is by diverging from them in advance, a planned divergence from your boundaries. So I'll use the 3 o'clock on Thursday example. if you need a 3 o'clock departure time on every Thursday because you need to pick your child up from school, for example, and there is a big project coming up, or there's a big, say, customer meeting that you need to be in all day on a Thursday, if that is planned in advance, those kinds of departures from your norms are okay, as long as they are documented, agreed in advance, and obviously you need to have some alternative arrangements for the collection of your child at school, right? So the important thing here is that it's noted and you communicate that this is a departure from the norm and it is not the new norm. It is not to become the new expectation. To do in this circumstance is manage people's expectations. So this is why I say you should stick to your boundaries quite heavily and be very, very consistent. Because by being consistent, people will believe you and they will become boundaries, and then they'll just become second nature. They become the norm. They become the accepted normal process for how you do your work and work in that workplace. If you do the opposite of that, and every now and then you stay back and go, oh, I just need to get this done. Oh, I just need to get that done. What you're doing is compromising on your position. And by compromising on your position, you are effectively saying that your boundaries aren't real. And then any other boundaries that you have set, or the expectations that you've set for these boundaries within work life, people will start to question those too, maybe consciously, maybe subconsciously. But if you're not going to stick to your word, people will start to doubt when it comes to that particular topic, which is, leaving on time on a certain day of the week. There are other kinds of boundaries you can set, things like not being contactable after hours, except in certain circumstances. Whatever you want to set, what works for you, this is a discussion you need to have with your employer, and you need to have reasonable expectations. Sometimes things happen, unexpected things, and sometimes we do need to be a little bit more flexible. But again, that should be the exception, not the norm. We don't want these things to become the norm, because that's when our work-life balance really starts to deteriorate. So the second topic I'd like to talk about today regarding work-life balance is around time management. Now, I historically and previously, really quite poor at time management. Able to effectively manage the tasking that I had to do, even if I'm setting my own tasking, I have historically been quite bad at that. And it's a skill that I have personally really had to work on to bring up to a level that makes me a highly productive and efficient kind of worker, even though these days I work for myself. So learning time management skills, it's a process. You can absolutely learn time management. If I can learn how to manage my time, you can learn how to manage your time if you're not very good at it. I was absolutely atrocious at it. Really, really, really bad. And so there are techniques, there are tools, there are tricks you can use that will help you get better at time management. And this allows for people also like me who are big time procrastinators. I often left things to the last minute. I would not, set aside the right amount of time to prepare for things, to work on, say, projects or assignments that were due at certain times, and end up doing everything at the last minute. This is quite prevalent. It's quite common in the workplace for people to take this approach. And you'll find that everything seems to be an emergency and everything seems to be last minute. And because people generally lack the time management skills and lack that motivation to put time management processes in place. So to manage your time effectively, you can use, there are hundreds of different tools you can use. It can be really, really simple, something as simple as your Outlook or Google Calendar, setting aside each day the right amount of time to work on your high priority tasking. And that also includes setting aside time for breaks, setting aside time for thinking time if you have a more problem solving kind of role and you need time to think through problems. Allocate time to all of the things that you need to do throughout the day. Don't fall into the trap of thinking needs to like I'm fully productive all the time. A lot of us have roles that we're not necessarily producing a specific tangible output all the time, right? A lot of us have roles where we need to be problem solving, collaborating, working with other people. And those things are important to getting to that larger, higher goal than simply delivering a report or whatever the tasking may be. So I highly recommend you honestly just do a quick little Google search on time management tools, time management techniques. You will find so much information out there, and look at them all and kind of pick the one that works for you. We all like to work in different ways. So do some research. There's 100 YouTube, there's probably 100,000 YouTube videos on this topic. People will talk about time boxing. People will talk about, say, planning the night before so that you've got everything ready to go in the morning. Some people prefer to do their planning when they first wake in the morning, and what are they going to do that day. People will talk about prioritization matrices. So a matrix that allows you to go, well, what are my most important tasks? Whatever you do, try to move beyond the basic to-do list. A list, here's the stuff I need to do. It doesn't give you that ability to prioritize beyond just looking at what's on the list. When we have a to-do list, we do one and not put in a priority order. We either work on the one that's at the top of the list, or we look at the list and we try and find the one that we feel like doing and that we find the most fun or the most enjoyable in that time. And that's what we focus on. And I'm as guilty of that as the next person. It happens all the time. So if you can use a prioritization system, kind of like an Eisenhower matrix is one example. Have a Google of that if you've never heard of it. It's really straightforward, easy to use, and super effective. And it takes such a little amount of time to use as a prioritization tool, and it can have a huge impact on the moving the needle, getting you closer to whatever your goals are. Next point I would like to talk about relating to achieving the work-life balance that we all want to achieve is the art and science of delegation and learning how to say no. So maybe you are, or maybe you are not in a position where you have the power to delegate tasks to other people. When I talk about delegating, it can be done in the formal sense as you have people that work for you that you can delegate tasks to, but it doesn't have to be about delegating to a subordinate, so to speak. You can delegate to your peers with their permission. It becomes more of a negotiation. It's less about saying, Fred, you need to do this, and more about saying, hey, Fred, I've got this tasking. I'm working on this other high priority task. Is there any way we could figure out a way to, maybe you could take this on and I can do that so that we can reach this team goal? So delegation is not about telling other people what to do all the time. It is often a negotiation and bringing people on that journey with you to support the team goal that we're all trying to achieve in whatever team it is that we're working in. So when you are delegating, a couple of things to think about. If you are officially delegating, or even if you're negotiating a delegation of a task, the important factors that you need to communicate when you are delegating a task. Of course, you need to tell the person what the task is, and give them enough detail and enough pointers in directions where they can find other information so that they can have all of the pieces of the puzzle to set them up for success. You do not want to set people up for failure, because it's only going to make you look bad and it's going to piss them off, and they're not going to want to do anything to help you again. So make sure you're setting them up for success. Beyond telling them what the task is and the scope of the work, beyond that, we need to set our expectations for quality and timeline. So when you give someone a task, you say, hey, Fred, I'm going to keep using Fred. Hey, Fred, I need someone to complete this report on this quarterly report, this customer status report. Here's some previous examples, and send a link. And here's the idea. And here's maybe a documented process of how to create this report. And I need it done to this quality. I want it to work. I want it to be as good as, and then give them an example, or say, it needs to be of a quality that you would be proud of and be able to put in front of the customer. Try and be a little bit clearer than that. That was kind of a little bit ambiguous as to the quality requirements. and then say, and I need it no later than X. And when you give someone a deadline, I find it's quite effective to include a reason what that deadline means. So for instance, hey Fred, I need you to do this task. I need it to be done to this. I need it no later than Thursday at 5 p.m. because I need to review it after you've completed it, make any minor amendments, and I need to submit that to the customer by Friday, 5 p.m., because that's when the customer deadline is. And when people understand a little bit of the bigger picture, they tend to be far more willing to help and meet those deadlines. Just a few tips there around effective delegation. Saying no is also a really, really important skill. I call it a skill because it is hard to say no sometimes, especially if you're talking to someone of influence, of someone in a powerful position, or you're talking to someone that you really want to impress. So you need to be real with yourself and consider that. How is your workload right now? If people just keep piling tasks on you and you keep saying yes, something has got to give. You're going to fail, you're going to burn out, you're going to do too many hours, and it's just not going to work. Similar to the setting of boundaries, effectively being able to say no confidently and effectively is something that is going to really, really impact your work-life balance in the long run. So the way that one of the effective ways that you can say no to new tasking, you'll see 100 things about this online. So honestly, if you want to look more into it, go and look it up. There are heaps of techniques you can use, whether it's written or verbal. But typically, what you want to do is say, especially if you're being assigned a task from someone who effectively is your boss, you say, hey boss, yep, I'd love to do that, but right now I'm working on this high priority tasking. Is what you're giving to me right now a higher priority than this? And in that circumstance, if they say, yes, it is, you go, understood. So who would you like me to pass this other tasking off to so that it can meet its deadline, so that I can focus on this new task that you've given me now? So what you're doing is bringing the awareness to the fact that you don't have unlimited resources and unlimited hours, and you can't deliver both of these things by the required deadlines. So by a way that shows your desire to make sure that both of those outcomes are reached, you're showing your awareness of what's required. And at the same time, you're saying no. You're saying, I can't do both of these. You're not taking on more than you can handle. What you're doing is you're saying, yes, I agree. I think both of these things are high priority. Yes, these deadlines, I understand them, but it's not possible for me to achieve this and this within both of these deadlines. So let's talk about how we can achieve that. Who else can we get involved? What can we get done? And that shows a real level of maturity. Just blindly saying yes, you might think will get you kudos to maybe people in influential positions. But ultimately, by saying no in the right times and in the right way, you actually are, it's another way of setting a boundary. It's another way, it's a temporary boundary saying, this isn't possible for me. I know what my capacity is. I know what my capability is. And these two deadlines are not, I can't do them both at the same time. So by using that kind of looking for the solution, even though you are not, the solution is not, yes, I'll get it done and then I work 20 hours that day, because that's not sustainable. The solution is, let's work together with the resources that we have to choose what gets done and how it gets done. And you don't necessarily choose how that works, but you recommend solutions, and you work with your boss and potentially with other teammates to choose the best way to assign tasking and prioritize it so that the important stuff gets done. So those 3 points are all relating to at work and how you conduct yourself. Work-life balance is more than just about what you do at work. It's also about what you do when you're not at work. I'm not going to go too much into these next 3 because they are, I guess, not necessarily my area of expertise as a career coach, but the next one is around mindfulness and stress reduction. Now, there is lots of documented evidence and research to show that practicing mindfulness and doing things to reduce your stress helps you to improve your productivity when you are at work. And being able to reduce your stress by controlling, setting those boundaries and controlling how much time and stress that you place on yourself while you are at work. If you are overly stressed, your productivity level will drop off dramatically. If you end up spending too many hours in a row working on the same task, or even just working really hard, your productivity will drop off. So we all work a lot these days. The modern world and our economies kind of expect us to work quite a lot of hours and get a lot done. So practicing mindfulness, doing things like, there are even like your watch, or if you've got one of these, if you've got a smartwatch, a lot of them have little breathing exercises you can do, really just to bring your heart rate down, to bring your blood pressure down, and to give yourself a break. It doesn't even have to be something that explicit, that like specific. Anything you can do to reduce your stress and increase your mindfulness, take a break. Schedule your breaks in, like I said earlier, and go and enjoy whatever it is that you enjoy. If it's 15 minutes of standing outside in the sun, for some people, that is a great reset. So work out what works for you and use it. And, if that means going and having a chat with someone, that's also a great way to reduce your stress and to practice mindfulness, to be present in the moment when you're talking to your work colleagues who you're genuinely interested in talking about. Beyond that, of course, maintaining physical well-being is critical to maintaining a work-life balance. If you don't have any kind of health and exercise routine, you need one. We can't all just work 24 hours a day or even 12 hours a day and do no exercise. And ultimately, those people who work a lot, like a huge amount of hours, tend to have poorer diets. They tend to order takeout more because they're low on time, so they go for the fast food options. And ultimately, all of those things snowball and they become eventually unmanageable. And you either you hit up against one of several major roadblocks. You will burn out. You will have some kind of health issue that prevents you from going to work. And if you're not of reasonable health, you are not able to deliver. And that's just a fact. So do what works for you. Find something that works for you in terms of exercising and eating reasonably well. It's not that easy to do, I'll admit. A lot of us get focused on what we're doing and we run out of time, so to speak, because we're not managing our time well. And then we end up buying the bad food and we end up not doing the exercise, and we stay back late at work one day, which means we miss our walk in the afternoon, or we miss our gym session, or whatever it is that you like to do in terms of exercise and healthy eating. So the key to that is find something that works for you. There are really great ways to do things that are going to optimize your health, but if you can't sustain it, it's no good for you. So it's something you need to be able to sustain for the long term. That's the key element in your wellness routine. Of course, as part of that, you've got hobbies and interests, things that you like to do outside of work. In my experience talking to young professionals that I coach, people that have no genuine hobbies or interests outside of work tend to have worse work-life balance outcomes because they focus solely or predominantly on work. They don't have any outlets, right? So, and a lot of people will say, look, I don't really like anything else, or I don't know what to do. But usually with the people that I work with, we can work through that. And ultimately, everyone that I know or everyone that I've spoken to does have something of interest. They just don't realize that that's what they're interested in. It could be as simple as reading a book. If reading a book is, a narrative, like a nonfiction or a fiction book, that can be a hobby and interest. It doesn't have to be something like, oh, I'm taking up basket weaving or I'm going to do skydiving or whatever it is, that like some extreme obvious hobby, or, playing sport. It doesn't have to be that. It just needs to be something that you are passionate about, you're interested in, and you enjoy doing. So finding those things and making sure that you prioritize at least a small amount of time to pursuing those things is really going to help your work-life balance and give you that consistency that we're all looking for. And so the last piece that I would like to talk about today, because I didn't want to keep this to about 30 minutes, is around flexible working arrangements. Now, we're all pretty familiar with flexible working arrangement these days, right? Since that global event that started in 2019 happened, we've all shifted how we work, and there's so much more online and flexibility and how we can do things. Not every job has that kind of flexibility. I do appreciate that. But most reasonable workplaces now will provide some level of flexibility, even if it is a 100% on-site working arrangement. Speak to your boss, speak to your manager about what works best for you. You might want to start earlier and finish earlier if you're a morning person. You might want to start later and finish later if you're more of a night owl. There are ways and means that we can come to arrangements that allow us to get the best out of us. If you are not a morning person, and I mean, I'm not a morning person, and I used to work shift work that started at 6 a.m. And I tell you, I guarantee you, that was not my best work. I was not the most productive, best outputting, productive individual when I started at 6 a.m. If I could move, but I would change shifts and move around, and like the 10 to 6 or the 2 to 10, because I'm more of a night owl. Those worked much better for me. And so I could negotiate things like maybe instead of doing 2 weeks of one shift and 2 weeks of the other, I would maybe do 1 week of one shift and 3 of the other. And I work towards getting that flexibility that works better for me. And at the same time, it works better for the workplace and for the employer, because they get more out of me, because I'm far more engaged and productive if the flexibility is there for me to do things in the way that I work best. So don't just think about online remote work when it comes to workplace flexibility. Workplace flexibility can be achieved in unlimited numbers of ways. All I suggest is that have the conversation, raise it, start talking about what it means. And it's a negotiation, and it's going to be a conversation, and you don't have to set anything in stone. You can trial periods. You can do, we might try this for 2 months and see how it goes. And then we'll meet again and talk about what worked and what didn't work. What were the issues, what were the benefits? And those are the kinds of mature conversations that you can have that will really allow you to shape your employment, to give you that flexibility that honestly everyone wants, but also that employers know that employees want. And by giving people flexibility, you're more likely to get better candidates in these roles, and you're also more likely to get the best out of the people that you already have. So that's it for today on my little live stream regarding work-life balance. I hope you found at least some of it useful. I do hope that my new live streaming software worked. I'm going to find out in about 2 minutes once I finish recording today. So thank you anyone who tuned in. I appreciate that. And if you have any questions, comments, anything like that, shoot me a DM, comment on the stream, whatever works for you. And I'll get back to you. I look at all the comments, I look at all the DMs, emails, whatever. If you want to chat to me about your career, just jump on my website and book a time, and I will talk about your career with you and see if it's something I can help you with.